This past week, reading through the Bible, the the chapter that struck me the most was 1 Kings 17, the story where Elijah is just coming into his own. He's becoming a prophet of God, and he tells Ahab that there's a drought coming. And then God says, I'm going to send you to the wilderness. I'm going to have you near a stream. Actually, there is a specific, go live by the brook Cherith, east of Jordan. And he says, I am going to command the ravens to come and feed you. That just struck me as kind of this really cool moment in the Bible, and I wanted to explore that a little bit more. One of the things that you hear all the time is we've been provided with everything that we need, and nature, God takes care of us through that. But then I don't think people actually look for evidence of that in the Bible, and they don't look for evidence of it around them. It's something that people say, and then they go and they I don't want to say you go to the grocery store and you don't trust that God has given you everything in nature, but homesteading, not only just getting your food, but also getting your what heals your body, what rebalances your body, things that are remedies out of nature, really start to tie you to this reality, and you start to see it. You see it in real time, but then you also see it happening in the Bible. So I kind of dug into the raven, because I think this is one of those stories that we hear and we sort of see it as, again, it's cartoonish. It's, God brings, it's like a Disney princess. Elijah is now Snow White sitting by a stream, and the birds of the air bring him things to eat. There's something more going on than just this one-time incident. Up until now, the raven is actually mentioned multiple times in the Bible. It is a bird that is native to where all of this is taking place in the time that the Bible was written, in the time that these stories occurred. So the raven, before this point, we see it coming up in these ancient societies. It's a harbinger. It can be a harbinger of death. It's supposed to be something that transmits messages between the living and the dead. And this came about because the raven was a bird that fed on carrion. It was a bird that fed on dead things. It was an opportunist. And honestly, they don't just eat dead things. They also were eating, they're an omnivore. The raven was mentioned in the story of Noah. And in fact, the raven is the first bird that Noah sent out from the ark. And so there is a sort of relationship with these birds in the culture and in early chosen people culture here, that that Noah would depend on this bird to tell him something. If you dig a little deeper in, there's a lot of people that believe that Noah sent out the raven because he was already seeing the mountaintops, and that's what prompted him to check out whether there was dry land. He was seeing the mountaintops, but he didn't know how far down things had gone. The raven, we are told, flies about over the waters until everything's dried. The idea that I've seen people put forth is that the raven didn't return, and it didn't return because it was capable of feeding on dead things. And so there are a lot of things that are dead as the water is receding. There are a lot of things that are dead that are washing up, and the raven can sustain itself, and it does not need to return to the ark. And then Noah sends out the dove. The dove returns to him the first time, presumably because she was able to, she brings back an olive leaf, and there's enough that we've gotten far enough down in the mountains that there are trees and she can find vegetation, but she can't get to the ground yet to be able to make a nest. And then the last time he sends out the dove, she doesn't come back. And that's because she's able to find enough things on the ground to build a nest, and she can build a home. And that's when Noah realizes that it's safe to come out of the ark. So we've seen the raven before, and uh, there are many associations with this bird sort of being separate from humanity, and being associated with prophecy, with communicating between spirit and life. And this is the bird that God chooses to feed Elijah. So, if you look at birds around the world, when I was growing up at home, there was a crow that came in and stayed with us at one point. And this crow would bring me gifts. And I never really, I didn't give the crow anything, but the crow was bringing gifts, bringing little things to me off and on. And we were sort of having this relationship with the crow. There are birds around the world, I think something like maybe 9 different birds that are known to give gifts. The raven in particular is known to give gifts in exchange for things. So it is known today in today's history and in our present time, it is known to talk. There are other birds that can talk. The raven will have a relationship with humanity, but it gets something in return. And so it's bringing gifts, but in exchange it gets food. So here we have the raven. God chooses the raven to feed Elijah, and I don't think that this is it's not a coincidence. It's not just because this was a bird in the area, or we're maybe supposed to just read it as any bird. It's a very specific bird that God has chosen as part of this story to and it was a very specific bird that he chose to feed Elijah. So it was something inside the original creation of the bird, and this is what I start to ponder is, did God take this affinity, this bird that he had created to have an affinity with humanity, and increase it for this purpose? And therefore, all of the descendants of those ravens then were more closely tied to humanity than they had been before. Again, we see it flying forth from the ark, and it doesn't really seem to have a close relationship or some interaction with Noah. But here we have this really close interaction, and the birds aren't getting anything. We're not told that Elijah is feeding the birds or giving them anything. He's near a brook, so there's water there, and they could be coming, for sure, they could be coming there because that's the only water source in this drought. God has caused this brook to be enough. It's safe for Elijah to stay there while the drought is going on. And we can see a logical argument here that these birds are drawn to the brook. But why feed Elijah? We're told that they brought bread and meat to Elijah in the morning and in the evening. And so Elijah has access to water the same way they would, but they're gifting Elijah with food. They're bringing him gifts with nothing in return. So the return, we could presumably say the return is coming from God. Is being gifted in this relationship that will forever be this bird being tied more closely to humanity for their benefit. That's something that's fascinating to me because I think a lot about, as a homesteader, I I believe I'm under contract with the land that I'm on. I made a contract when I first got here that I would support the land and care for the land, and in exchange, the land would support and care for me. This is ages old. I've talked about this as the contract that we are supposed to have with the earth, with creation, that we are meant to be stewards, and in exchange, we receive everything that we need. I don't think that God created nature and then it's this inanimate container that we're allowed to walk around in. I believe that creation has a will, has a desire to be that support. We see in sort of the woo-woo circles that I learned herbalism in, this notion that a spirit practitioner could go out and ask of the plants to heal a specific health ailment that and protect, perhaps go to the dandelion and say, I need you to heal this cut. And dandelion doesn't necessarily have the chemicals within it to heal the cut, but because your spirit interacted with the spirit of the dandelion, it would somehow be able to heal that. From a science brain, I do believe that there is an interaction. From a science and a Christian brain, I do believe that there is an interaction there. I do believe that the plant is capable, we've seen it in science to be proven that the plants are capable of pulling chemicals into their tissues that they aren't otherwise known to contain. And I do believe that there is a will within creation to support humanity when we are interacting with Holy Spirit, when we are interacting with God. I don't think that nature is inanimate and just without any purpose. I believe that God created creation around us to glorify him, to demonstrate his design, to be an ever-present reminder of who God is and how he is good and perfect and designed and systematic. There is order because God is not chaos. God is good, not everywhere, all over the place, unexpected. We can understand God. He is who he says every single day, exactly the same as since he began the world. That is the order that we see in nature. And I believe that we see this willfulness in nature to express that about God and be our helpmates and to be our support. I don't think that this story of the ravens feeding Elijah was intended to be an isolated moment where ravens were magically gifted with this ability, with this desire to further God's chosen prophet, to sustain him, to keep him safe. I think it's another moment in the Bible that we overlook where God is telling us, yeah, the trees, the rocks, everything that's around you, I created it and it is endowed with my purpose. And it is, all of creation is intent on my design, on my purpose being fulfilled. And it's a fun puzzle to think about these ravens. Did they have the ability? Did they have the potential? Like we have the potential for many different giftings. Did they have the potential built in at the beginning of the world? And God took that potential and gifted them more in this moment to be able to benefit from a relationship with humans in a more close manner. I don't know, something to ponder, but I hope that God is blessing you today with these sorts of curiosities. Go out, experience God in his creation and see what he has for you, because it is true. He left us, he put us here with everything that we needed to sustain us, and he can call upon the giftings of the things that are around us to take care of us in our hour of need.